So transparency, it's a big problem, right? And well, there are plenty of technologies and have been technologies for the last, again, 20 years or more, starting with probably the RFID and other tags, as well as systems that will have also mapping visibilities, real-time GPS traces, plenty others, blockchain, more now in these current times. But those technologies definitely need to be more accessible, more affordable, and also find ways to really keep them in the item SKU level, as we say in supply chain. And that definitely will help, with the proper systems, databases to help companies to track where a specific package, delivery, people, truck, is in the entities of the supply chain. Now, from one side is that, but the other is that not all the supply chains are fully integrated, mainly because there are entities that depend on other organizations as well. So this requires also, other type of collaboration in the supply chain, as well as probably with other companies that are in other supply chains, because the complexity is huge. And I believe now with the pandemic times, we all got to see what is happening. It's not a single supply chain, but there are millions of supply chains for each of the products that we have. So tracking down and having that strategy to provide more transparency and visibility requires definitely not just the technology, but also the willingness by the companies. And having these two and then working together, building systems that will have similar capabilities is, again, another big challenge. Now, when we look at supply chains, we enter to another issue, which is not all the companies have the same level of sophistication, and I'm not talking about just big companies or medium-sized, but also micro firms. Right? Like if you look at any supply chain in any part of the world, has very likely more than 90% of the firms that have less than 10 employees. Now, ask them to have the same technology, the same tracking capabilities, and it becomes very challenging. So I believe there is still a long path to achieve really the full transparency. I believe there are great efforts. And that actually, those efforts sometimes are done by NGOs or other organizations that were more in the seek for truth, looking at social injustice when they were looking at, for instance, sweatshops in the 80s or extracting materials that will have other type of damages. That helped to actually some companies to identify who were their suppliers, right? That sometimes otherwise they will actually even know. So that has brought also more concern in the big companies, because just by looking at the glances of sustainability, there is always a risk that somebody's going to find out something that will probably put at risk your reputation as a company. So tracking down who is your supplier, trying to have more information, more standardization, more control is now happening, and that's something that should be an exercise that all the time should be in the on the desk of any company that is trying to look at that sustainability strategy. And that's why I was mentioning, what is a sustainable supply chain? Well, those that are actually looking at these key vulnerabilities and trying to build the strategies to mitigate the potential impact this may cause. So the tracking of sustainability issues, is highly dependent again on the willingness of to collaborate by the companies belonging to a specific supply chain, as well as the technology that is available. Of course, there is a need still to translate more sustainability indicators into the day-to-day operations, and I believe this is where the big challenge is found. Right at the end, many of the companies have their sustainability teams or groups completely apart from the rest. It's more like a continuous improvement team that is working on side projects trying to improve certain parts of the operations, but they do not belong to the operation. So even though the CEOs in organizations get indicators on carbon emissions and others in their reports, this indicator does not belong to any of the planners, nor the schedulers, not those that are moving operations. They don't know if by looking at my inventory replenishment strategies or looking at my forecast demand, I actually know what's going to be exactly the environmental information associated with that decision. And we are talking just about transparency within the organization, and because this is not even there, of course, just extend that to other entities in the supply chain is still far from what is happening currently. So one of the things that we are also pushing in our strategies in the lab is helping companies to not just account for this information in strategic decisions like network design or others, but look at how your day-to-day operations are either driving increase or decrease in your environmental sustainability within the organization, and help your contributors, your employees, get that visibility so that in their decisions they can actually contribute to the strategy, know whether we are going towards that direction or not. And I've seen lately plenty of different panels and discussions in which I also have taken part, that this is a big topic now, how we can translate that into something that everybody can understand and also help the organization, and also these groups more embedded, the sustainability groups embedded more in other departments within the organization.